Recording in progress.
Hey everybody, welcome to our live Q&A session. Happy Independence Day, 4th of July. I'm John Kasravi of JQK Immigration Law Firm. And what we do is every Tuesday, almost rain or shine, including holidays, we try to come on live to take your questions about U.S. immigration. There's a lot going on and questions don't sleep. People's cases don't sleep. You're still worried about this kind of stuff. So I try to come on here to share any knowledge I have for educational purposes. To try to just help you become better at your case. So again, this is general education kind of stuff, and we'll take your questions. If you are doing a marriage or fiance type case, I do strongly recommend downloading our guide, John's Ultimate Marriage Green Card Guide, which really breaks down the process so you have a better understanding of what's going on before you even hire an immigration lawyer. That way you know what to ask them, get the basics out of the way, and could ask more complex kind of questions. You get some good answers. You can download that guide at this website I created called marriageimmigrationlaw.com. It's marriageimmigrationlaw.com. You put your email and it'll be sent to you. So you get a PDF, a 40+ page guide of the A through Z of the process. And then, you can figure out what you want to do after that. So we're going to take your questions live. If you do ask a question, please ask it once. And if you ask questions about timelines, unfortunately, I really can't answer those. But if you ask your question too many times, the same stuff, especially on TikTok, because people have a habit of doing that on TikTok, what we'll have to do is probably mute your account so you can't ask questions, because it's hard keeping track. Because all of a sudden there'll be a flow of like 100 questions coming at once, and they can't keep track. You're asking the same stuff over again. So Mortza Ashraf, one of our viewers on YouTube, says hi to you too. Thanks for joining. We're live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Daryl Winneball, hi Daryl, how are you? Good to see you. Happy 4th of July to you as well. Great people come on the show. It's always nice to see you all. And, just talking about these kind of cases, we get a lot of questions about interview waivers. They still are happening for most cases if you're doing adjustment of status in the United States. So if you're applying for a green card case in the United States based on marriage, your case is pretty clean. They're usually waiving the interview because they're so backed up. And you just get the green card in the mail after they're done with the case. So that's a good thing. But if you're going through the embassy system, there still is a mandatory interview period, which gets pretty frustrating because in some parts of the world, those could take a long time. So, for example, if you're from Pakistan, probably one of the worst, you're waiting 2 years right now to get an interview. In other countries, after you interview, for example, if you're from Iran, even after you interview, there'll be a period of waiting before they finally make a decision to whether to approve your case or not. So there's a lot of mischief going on there. VIPS Immigration says, happy 4th of July. Same to you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm wondering if we give a high five or something on these apps, but I can't figure it out. So let's skip that. Let's get some more questions. Tika says, what happened when you get your I-130 approved? I just did a video on this on TikTok. But I'm assuming if you just did a standalone I-130, the relative that you're requesting this family petition on is outside the United States. So the next step is consular processing. Now, if you're a U.S. citizen working with your spouse, minor children, or parents, you get started pretty quickly on the consular processing section. But if it's other kinds of family members, for example, brothers and sisters, or like children that are married, if you're a citizen, or adult unmarried children, if you're a green card, all these kind of cases, it'll still be many years before you can start the next step. Again, it's called consular processing, where you begin giving documents to the National Visa Center, which includes financial documents for the affidavit support and the like, and an interview gets scheduled. So Tika Love, for your question on TikTok, it depends on what kind of I-130 you have. And this is the question that pops up a lot. People say, I have an I-130, what's next? Well, there's different types of I-130s depending on whether you're a citizen or a green card holder, who the foreign relative is, what country the foreign relative was born in, how old the foreign relative is, are they married, are they single? It creates all these subcategories. That's why we always have to dig in deeper to each case to see what's going on. But essentially, the shorter answer is once I-130 is approved, eventually consular processing starts. But when that starts and what's required, what's in it, all that stuff really depends on the details of your case. For example, if you apply for brother or sister and they have children, nieces and nephews, are those nieces and nephews going to be part of the case? We don't know. It depends on the age. It depends on the calculation called the Child Status Protection Act to keep their age under 21. It gets pretty tricky from there. Best thing to do is to schedule a private consultation. But thank you for your question. 260 says, what can you say about the K-1 visa? Any news? Are they picking up the process? No, nothing but bad news on the K-1 visa process. So K-1 fiancé visas start out with filing a form called I-129F. They've become horribly long, 14, 15 months to get approved. Marriage cases average 12, 13 months right now for the I-130 to be approved. The K-1 I-129F taking 14, 15 months. And then once it's approved, it usually was faster to get an interview appointment, but it's not necessarily the case. So 9 out of 10 times, if not 9.5 out of 10 times, we do not recommend people do fiance visas. All it is more expense and more headache and delays in getting work permits once your spouse is or fiance is in the United States, you then marry. So very rarely do we recommend people do a fiance visa. But if you're already in it and it's too late, unfortunately, just more delays. Amir asks, how fast does a FOIA take? Well, Amir, it depends on what kind of FOIA you have. There's the OBIM FOIA, there's a CBP FOIA, there's a USCIS FOIA, there's a DOS FOIA, there's an EOIR FOIA. Some take a month, some take a year. CBP sometimes doesn't even respond, or when it does, it redacts everything so you can't even see what's going on in the response. USCIS was taking 6 months to a year. They got sued in federal court, and the people who sued them won because the statute, when Congress wrote it, says USCIS is supposed to respond to FOIAs within 30 days, and they weren't doing that for years. They're taking like 6 months to a year. So that was successful, and recently, so USCIS FOIA has gone faster, but it's all over the place. And again, this is why these questions are kind of hard to answer, because there's all these different things I need to know. And sometimes you might not even have filed your FOIA correctly, so you're not going to get a response. In a month or two, you'll get a response that says you filed your FOIA incorrectly. You didn't send it to the right place, or you send it the wrong place. You never hear about it and just keeps going. You know, that stuff happens too. So all these questions require me to ask. That's why people contact me all the time and say, I have an easy question. Well, your question is easy. But once you ask your question, I have 6 questions I got to ask you, which then dive into another multiples of questions in depth. And then I got to look at the documents. So that's why it's hard to do this stuff without sitting and seeing the documents, the consultation. Again, Amir, maybe you did the FOIA wrong. And I've seen that happen too. So how long does it take? I think I give you a good answer from there. Tara Brown says, not from Mexico. I'm not really sure what that's reference to. None says, is unemployment a beneficiary and financial hardship a reason for expedite? Not really the beneficiary, but you could always give it a shot. It depends on your case. I can't recommend someone do an expedite because they may call the government and say some information that hurts their case. So, but the beneficiary, you can. Okay, so let's do this way. It depends on what you're trying to expedite here. So the question about none is about expediting. What is it exactly trying to expedite? I-130 petition, a work permit, adjustment of status interview, a naturalization interview. It depends on all this kind of stuff. But I like one case where a guy was working for an organization, and he was a student here, and when you graduate as a student, you get 1 year of OPT. And then what happened is if we didn't expedite the work permit, he would have lost his job. And so we say, listen, we need to keep his job because he already has one. We need to get the work permit because he was doing a marriage adjustment case. He married a U.S. citizen, and they approved the expedite within like 45 days. Now, this was like 3 years ago. Expedites have gotten tremendously harder to get because the government is backed up, doesn't have enough employees, and everyone's asking for expedites nowadays. So, you know, I don't like to give specific guidance because I'm not sure what you're going to tell them. I just try to take over these things, or we write stuff out with my clients and make sure I know what they're telling the government, because I don't want people to go say something that's going to be problematic for their case. It's not good. A question on Instagram, Bertha says, how long does it take to get an EB4 visa available from Dominican Republic? Depends on what kind of case you have, but it could take a year or two or more. G4 says, can I get paid on an F1 visa through my home country bank account? And will that affect me in the future? It depends on what the work is that you're doing. And there's no exact answer for some answers that may come up from what you respond to my question. So talk with a lawyer in private. Simply says, how long does the I-290B take? 6 months to a year. It could be faster. It could be slower. Let's take some cases on YouTube. Joanne asks, hi, there's a priority date on the I-130, January 2000. On the receipt notice for I-485 says there's a priority date of June 16, 2023. Why are they 2 different priority dates? I don't know. They might have made a mistake. I'm not sure what's going on there. Nivelle says, hi, good night. How long does USCIS take to review your case in 8 months? There's no timelines to review your case. I-130, again, we talked about this earlier in the show, but you say you applied for an I-130, but you don't say what kind of I-130. So if you did a marriage I-130, 12, 13 months. U.S. citizen marriage, 12, 13 months. Green card holder marriage, 18 to 24 months. U.S. citizen applying for siblings, 4 to 10 years. So again, these things make a big difference, and you don't give me all the information. And I know this is not something you do every day, so you don't know what information you give a lot of times, but it makes it impossible for me to give a proper answer, and that's why we need to have private consultations. Paranoid Android, one of our regulars, good to see ya. Which is typically faster route to green card, marriage or EB1 if approved? It varies depending on what it is. So if you get married to a green card holder, it might take longer. If you're married to a citizen, it might be shorter. EB1, right, is usually fastest, but you got to pay premium processing, which is more expensive. But it depends, EB1 through consular processing or adjustment of status. And what country are you from? Are you going to get hit with retrogression? So there was no line for EB1 cases, But if you go on the visa bulletin, our line emerged for EB1 cases. This is an employment first category. These are like the top of the line people that the U.S. wants to come to the United States to work and get green cards. And so when you look at the visa bulletin, which is the line that exists for people getting green cards, EB1 category right now, if you're from China, they're doing cases from February 2022. So if you're Chinese and you're in the United States and you marry a U.S. citizen, then that's the fastest. But if you're in the United States and you're non-Chinese, let's say you're from Mexico, and you get an EB1A extraordinary ability green card, that potentially may take the same amount of time as a marriage case. So all these things make a difference. All the specific aspects of the case make a big difference. Andres asks, hello, my previous divorce paper was miswritten. It's supposed to say Andres, but they wrote it Indris. Do you think it will be a cause problem during my upcoming marriage process? Yeah, you should correct your name. It should tell a difference that it's a typo, but you never know when you're dealing with the government. Go fix it, have it amended. She asks, does a child have to return to their original country if a parent petitioned for that child's legal permanent resident while a child's on a visitor visa? I don't know. I need more details. This is case specific, and if I don't give exact information, it could be like very deleterious and problematic for your case. So it depends on how old the child is, what kind of case it is, the case of retrogression, what country they're from. I can't give this kind of case specific advice without being fully safe about making sure I give the right answers. And so this is for general education only. Masumi says, can I change my M1 visa to an F1 visa? It's not impossible. You just got to get through school. Joanna says, is it normal for USCIS to request biometrics for children under 14? I don't think they do that. Maybe. I don't know. Paranoia, not Chinese or Indian national. I get paranoia. It depends. As I'm married to green card or citizen, they have issues. Are they in the United States or outside the United States? We got to go through all these different variations. Each one of them can have a different answer. Masui says, asking the same question over and over again. Parent Android says, thank you, Council. Before, same to you as well, Parent Android. Parent Android, I can't remember if we talked or not and stuff like that, but hit me up. You've been watching the show for years, it seems. If we haven't talked in a while, just hit me up. Email me at info@jklaw.com and let's chat to what's going on with you. Okay, let's go to TikTok, get some questions. Said asks, once the I-140 is approved, how long does it take to get the green card? It depends on what kind of I-140 you have. It could be, you got to file for adjustment of status first. So if you haven't filed for that's one thing. Then it depends on what country you're from. Then it depends on if you have an EB1, 2, 3, 4, or 4, or not 4, EB1, 2, or 3. And so there's too many factors in play. It's not an easy question to answer without knowing a lot of more information. If you know that information, USCIS is inconsistent. So you never know what's going to happen. Patient Ski says, I have a C9 category EAD based. That's an adjustment of status work permit. Can I work while waiting for my card? They said CO9 is eligible. No, the receipt is not a work authorization. It has to get approved for you to get it. Brittany says, I just got an approval on the K1 visa a year later, just waiting out the next step. So congrats, hopefully it happens sooner. 26 Ross says, Brittany Williams was a year. I sent mine in October. Okay. Note says, I have a case with the immigration, but got deported 3 months ago. Can I get a waiver to come back? That depends on why you got deported and what's going on. Tika Love says, for my husband, I'm sorry, Tika, we asked so many questions in the meantime. I don't remember the details of your case that we talked about earlier. Walker says, what is the processing time for I-7519 now? 1 year, 2 year, more or less. ASR says, I'm from Afghanistan. How much is it possible I will win the asylum? How long decision cake? I don't know. That's not enough information. Not just because you're from Afghanistan doesn't mean you're going to get asylum approved, and the timelines vary. JS says, what are the chances that I-6 want approval? How long does it take? I don't know anything about you. These questions aren't something I can answer. Okay. Omar says, I said F1. I'm on F1 OPT work permit based on being a student visa graduate and can't get a job because I'm off mortgage. Should I go back to apply for grad school? No. If you're on a student visa, after you graduate, you get 1 year work permit to get on the job experience. If you can't find a job, you can start for basic OPT. You can start your own company and work for yourself. You should get the licensing and both bank accounts, all this kind of stuff. But you can be self-employed on OPT for 1 year. So that's maybe something you want to do to get some experience here, run a business here, all that kind of stuff. Now, you can't do it if you have STEM OPT. That won't allow it. Also, it depends on what graduate level you are. So if you already have a graduate school and then you do OPT and you go to another graduate school, then you lose the opportunity to get a work permit once you graduate the second time. So if you're a bachelor's degree, you do OPT, then grad school, that's okay. But I don't want you to lose the opportunity to get a job that you want because you used up your OPT. But you should look into self-filing type OPT. Shelley follows up, how long does it take for I-130 process when a legal permanent resident petition for a 10-year-old child? It's going to take a long time right now. These cases got backed up. It's going to take a couple of years, unfortunately. Hilda says, do I need to change my last name to my husband's last name? You don't have to do that. No, that's a personal decision. Bree says, I'm a citizen and my husband is in Africa. I did the form on 30 April. How long until the review? It's going to take years probably for that case to be done. Ishar says, I'm from Afghanistan. Already answered that question. We got a lot of repeats starting to come. But there also says, when you have an appointment in Washington, D.C., what do you have to do before you go there? I don't know what kind of appointment you have. I don't know what kind of case you have. This line of information. Jazz asks, MVC document accepted. What does this mean? That means they accepted your national visitor documents that you uploaded. They would send you an email saying your document check qualified, which means they got the basic documents they need. Now you got to wait for your interview. Case, thank you so much. Very kind of you giving these roses on TikTok. Massimo asks, but as listened from the lawyer, they said that I can change from F1 to N1 by doing the pre and processing, and I can change by joining the course F1 status. So it's not real. I didn't say it's not real. I said it's possible to change from M1 to F1. You got to get accepted to school and do the paperwork and the pre and processing now. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure I said it wrong, but yeah, you can mess with it. Madrissa says, when you have an appointment, okay, I already answered that. Tomi asks, does traffic ticket get affect the marriage green card case? It doesn't typically. A colleague of mine mentioned in Florida, I think it might have been a citizenship case, but they got denied for having tickets, but it's not something I believe is a problem, and I've never had a problem with. Unless you're not constantly like, I had one guy who came and he had 15 speeding tickets, and now I'm like, that might be a problem because they might see you're just a belligerent person, like, so that might be a problem. But I didn't take him as a client because they were recalcitrant and kind of being annoying. But if you just got one or something, no, it's not typically a problem. Or at least says, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen. How can I get my sister to come to the U.S. from Sudan war? I'm not sure. Get a tourist visa to come and visit. And I think Sudan has TPS. I'm not sure about. I don't know exactly. I have to talk with y'all in private to see what's going on. TikTok, Sarah says, if I stay in the U.S. for 5 months and left with the B1, B2, how long I have to stay to go back to the United States? Please, my question, sir. There's no fixed time that you need to be outside. You just try to come back in whenever you want to, and then the government has to expect you're not coming here to work or overstay and that kind of stuff. Masuma, you asked a question about change of status. You're getting into really case specific stuff. You got to just set a consultation and talk about it. Joaxa says, does USCIS treat F4 sibling adjustment applicants with a spouse the same as regular married green card? Do you have to prove that your marriage is genuine, all the evidence? It's better that you do because they could always get into that stuff if you want. You typically won't be able to do adjustment of status for a brother or sister case because they usually won't have status. But if that is the case, you're one of the rare cases doing adjustment of status for sibling case, then maybe. What is Form I-508, I-566? These are forms from Sweetie. So these are forms for people that have certain diplomatic type visas for E2, A visa, G visa, NATO visa, to give away the special powers they have as, between foreign relations, Department of State, diplomatic ties. It's to waive those when you're doing adjustment of status, for example. So it's rare, but it's needed. A lot of times we deal with people who have either a diplomat marries U.S. citizen or an E2 visa holder or E visa holder marries U.S. citizen. Apply those. Very technical kind of thing. A lot of both immigration lawyers and USCIS officers don't know about that forms. A lot of people forget to do that, but it's a nuanced thing that you got to know about for immigration. Jazz says, how do you check interview wait times for spouse overseas? There's no way to check interview wait times. Sevda says, if you change status from H4 to F1 or apply for U visa, what will happen to my EAD based on H4? Once the change of status goes through, it becomes invalid. Okay, Tomi Sid says, can someone on deportation file for advanced parole? Anyone can file for advanced parole, but it's not recommended to do so unless it's some such situation. User 12 says, how soon can I file for PIP? As soon as you meet the criteria. Sarah says, if I stay in the U.S. for 5 months, we are answer that question. Alondra says, are COVID vaccines still required before consular appointment? Mexico doesn't have the approved ones. I think Mexico probably would have the approved COVID vaccines. I'm pretty sure they would. But if you're going to apply for a green card or a fiance visa, yeah, you're going to have to get the COVID vaccine still. So guys, how long does it take? It kind of sucks because the vaccines don't make sense anymore, but it is what it is. Sweetie says, thank you, you're welcome. Suk says, how long does it take for immigration to respond after applying? I'm on a tourist visa, I just got married. Timelines vary. It's different for each case. Can someone who's out of status go to school? Essentially, like in the state of California, anyone could go to school. But there's status violations involved with that. But they have it open for education purposes. Brandon asks, "Hey John, end of May, I applied for my N400 citizenship case. Approximately how long is it going to take for my civics test?" There's no approximate time. It varies. Marcia says, "Hi, good night. Good night to you too. Happy 4th of July." And Ishar says, "Oh, we answered that question." We get a lot of repeat questions coming. "Hi, I need some guidance on F2 visa. Schedule consultation. We'll talk about it in private. My email is info@jqqlaw.com. None says, "I'm trying to expedite my I-130. It's been 5 months since documentary qualified." So you're saying inconsistent stuff. If you're documentary qualified, that means that's your case at the National Visa Center. That means your I-130 has already been approved and done. What you're trying to do is expedite an interview appointment with the embassy, and you give that a shot. But you got to get the terminology right, because they're wrong things that you're saying. They don't go together. Hidal says, "Do I need to change my last name?" No, we already answered that question. We're getting a lot of repeat. Please don't ask the same question over again. It makes it hard to get to the questions that people are asking. So keep flipping through that. How does medical affect your case? If you have one of the things that are problematic, you have tuberculosis, gonorrhea, syphilis, you're a drug abuser, you have certain mental health issues, you don't have certain vaccines, all this stuff could prevent you from getting a green card. Clark says, "I'm on H2B. How do I change my status?" We got to figure out some other status to get to. Most of them is asking both on YouTube and TikTok about changing status to F1. We already answered that question. 36 Cardi Singh says, "Hi, good to see you. Hi, thank you for coming on the show." Okay, Sexy Amoy says, "The immigration officer stamped no AOS, no EOS, no COS on my passport. Can I adjust status?" Yes. So one thing that happens sometimes is when you're entering the United States, if the officer is afraid you're actually coming here to stay and change your status or something like that, they'll write in your passport no AOS, which means no adjustment of status or applying for a green card in the United States. No EOS, meaning you can't extend the existing, probably tourist visa here status. And no COS, no change of status. For example, going from a tourist visa to a student visa. This has no bearing. They're not supposed to write this in there. And I've talked to, for example, the leadership in the Los Angeles International Airport. They've asked their officers to stop writing that. But it's a holdover that they used to write this kind of stuff to scare you, but it has no bearing on your case. You are allowed to adjust status. Prince Diana Matia says, how long it takes for an IA-24? 3 months to 18 months. Marsha Wheeler says, "I have a situation, need expertise. F3 priority date, July 27. My child was on the petition. He was 16 at the time myself. They took his name off the petition. See, he's 32 now. He's probably aged out. I'd have to analyze the birth certificates, the priority dates, and all this kind of stuff. But if the child's 32, they probably aged out by this point. I'm sorry to say. So you have to get a green card, then turn around and apply for them as long as they're single. And that's going to take a while itself. So it doesn't look good, unfortunately. 36 says, I-360 sibling, I-130 sibling case or the processing time, what to do. You don't really want to speed up an I-130 petition for a sibling, because the more time it takes for that I-130 to be approved, the more it'll help if you have a niece or nephew and their age is going higher, because later on, according to Child Status Protection Act, you could subtract the time it took for the I-130 case to be approved from their age and to get them in the case. The previous question where Marcia was saying that her child aged out, if her I-130 case took longer, you could have subtracted that time and would have helped out more. So you don't really want to speed up a I-130 sibling, because they take so long anyway. Your last name is Singh, so you're probably from India. That's going to take 15, 20 years. So if the I-130 is taking, 15 years, 13 years instead of 10 years, it doesn't really make a difference. You can only benefit from that. Les says, what about the name? If my marriage certificate doesn't appear, my new last name, I want my green card associated with my husband's name. They said that Corey marriage certificate always appears. Should I? When it comes to name changes, it depends on the rules are in that state. California, for example, when you get married, you can put your name on the marriage certificate. Now, in some states, as long as you're married, you can use your spouse's name, even if it's not on the certificate. So it's on a state-by-state basis. And at the end of the day, it's going to depend on the officer dealing with the USCIS, how they're going to deal with it, how they want to have your name. If you're doing a consular processing, they go by what the name is in the passport, unless you have a government, like an official name change record. Or you should update the passport, really. Invisible says, hello, I have one cousin, and he has 2 American citizen sons. What he has to do depends. If his sons are 21, then you apply for him. IK says, is a U.S. citizen minor child entering the United States, the child automatically becomes a citizen? If a U.S. citizen minor child enters the U.S., is a child automatically become a citizen? Are you saying reword your question. I'm sorry, we won't have time because we're gonna it shows at the end. But you don't get automatic citizenship by entering the United States necessarily unless you do certain kinds of paperwork. So it's much more nuanced than the way you're putting it. Harsh says, I already filed my K1 fiance visa, still pending 9 months with a lawyer. Yeah, they're gonna take a long time. Ashia follows up. I-130 for child under 18 and parent only have a green card. How long does process take? I think the answer to this question is going to take a couple of years, 2 to 4 years probably. Liz says, is it okay to mention I was working on B1, B2 visa after my U.S. wife filed a petition for me? You got to be honest in your cases. Now, if you've been working on a tourist visa and you marry a U.S. citizen, the work itself, although violation doesn't cause problems for the green card, the issue is if you falsely claim to be a U.S. citizen to get that job and that kind of stuff, you got like a fake passport or fake stuff like that. So you got to still be careful. I need to analyze that case individually. Blue says, what punishment would you get if you were married in another country and here without divorce? Well, that's bigamy, having 2 past spouses. It's illegal, and it's a problem for your green card case or any visa case. And we'll take 2 or 3 more questions and we'll call it a day. Probably says, what happens if you're on a conditional green card and due to verbal argument, your wife calls the cops? I mean, what happens? I mean, that's too broad ended. I have to see what's going on. I should talk with the lawyer in private. What happens if you're conditional? Okay. Because just because the police hat came, it's not a big deal. You need to keep documentation of it. You probably need to tell government. The bigger problem is like you're fighting so much that they call the police. That means your relationship isn't really holding up that well. And there's other issues that come up that would be problematic. Are you going to get a divorce? Has there been abuse when the police come? Did they claim you? So what you said leads me to ask 5 or 10 more questions I got to know and planning out down the line. Because when you have a conditional green card, you have to file for the permanent green card. And that's going to be pending right now, like 1 or 2 years before they approve that. While that's pending, if your relationship isn't good now, police are coming out, your spouse is probably going to go on divorce. You're going to get a divorce while the next case, the I-75 was pending. And if that happens, it's a mess of a problem. So in these kind of cases, we talk to the clients, say, listen, are you sure you want to be in this relationship? And you know, if you're going to get a divorce, get it sooner to get the divorce certificate. Because if your divorce is not finalized, it creates problems for the next step. And I just said a lot of different things right now. It's complicated. And that's why this isn't the form ask kind of question. Just call my office, schedule a consultation, info@jqqlaw.com. I guess don't call me, email me. I only take emails from new clients, and then we schedule video calls to talk about it. So let's take 1 or 2 more questions, and we'll call it a day. Let's see. We got a lot of these repeat questions I'm trying to get through. What happens if you're on? We already answered that. Right, guys, don't ask. I answered all of these questions. Why do you keep answering over and over again? I'm not going to answer it again once I already answered. I don't know why people do that on TikTok. Just answer the same thing. It's pretty kind of whatever. But okay, so it's just a bunch of repeat questions. So with that, I'll take one that's not repeat if I could find one, and I guess 99 repeat questions. Okay, then okay, we'll take one. Prince Diana Mathis on YouTube says, I keep following up on the I-824 to the Potomac Soma Center, but no one is answering. It's been a year already. Do I need a lawyer for immigration? No, those take a while. I mean, it's better you have a lawyer, but those cases take a while, unfortunately. That's when the I-824 comes up. A lot of times we say also submit a form I-130 because that just might become faster. The I-824 is not a reliable form. And Luffy Fawn says, always love listening to you. Happy, thank you so much. You're welcome. I love you. Thank you for the kind words. And Akash says, happy 4th of July, brother. Same to you as well. Thank you for the kind words. We're about to end the show right now. Wish you answer all your questions. Unfortunately, got a lot of repeat questions. Hard to skim through all of them. But we always answer like, 30 or 40 questions. It's always a busy show. So with that, I guess I'll see what this one last question from Quincy is on YouTube. My 130 got approved. Everyone watching on TikTok, if you have more chance of having questions answered, because on TikTok, people repeat the questions, so it's hard to get to them. But watch on the YouTube. The channel is U.S. Immigration Talk. Follow us on YouTube and ask your questions. They're more likely to be answered. Or on Instagram, JQK Law Firm. But TikTok is just so many repeat questions. It's hard to find a new question in between the 50 repeat questions that are there. So sorry, everyone who couldn't answer your question. Blame it on your fellow TikTokers for not using this app properly. So Quincy asked, my I-130 got approved 2 months ago. What happened to my I-45 still pending? Yeah, sometimes that's the case. And Les Suarez says, what vaccines are required? Happy 4th. Thank you. You're welcome. We have a video on YouTube that talks about the medical checkup. So check out, type in JQK Law, I-693, and we go over the vaccines. But if you look at the form I-693, I-693, On the near to last page, I'll have a list of the vaccines. With regard to the flu vaccine, you only need to do that if it's the winter time, and COVID is still a requirement. They may have to change that soon, hopefully. We have no word on them changing it for green card cases, but that's that. So just go and check out the form and have a list of the vaccines there, Les. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be back again next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern, to take your general education questions live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and TikTok. I may have repeated one of those, but having said that, God bless everyone. Be safe and see you all soon. Bye-bye. Recording stopped.